guys, my name is Carol.
Hi, I'm Esty.
Hi, my name is Dushime and welcome to our channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. You can find us on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So today we're going to do short stories that some are shortlisted, some won, and some were in the anthologies of the Caine Prize. Esther, tell us about the Caine Prize.
Right. The Caine Prize, it is a prize awarded annually for writers, African writers in particular. The definition of an African writer is anyone with parents of African descent. So you could be living in Africa, living in the diaspora, you will still be considered an African writer. The amount of money given to the winner is £10,000. So normally the stories are compiled into an anthology. There will be the shortlisted stories together with some other stories that are normally compiled from a workshop, a writing workshop that also happens annually.
Just to add into that, the Caine Prize was launched in the year 2000 and it was established in a bid to encourage African writers to, write more and really just take the African story to the international scene. In addition to that, it really just focuses on short stories. It's very specific, so short stories, not long novels. Short stories being between 3,000 words to 10,000 words. Focuses on short stories that are contemporary and really just bringing that to the international scene. Today we'll be looking at 5 short stories that, we didn't choose all of them because of course we can't cover them all, but we hope that this could be a start for you to go and find short stories elsewhere. So we'll but I'll just list the short stories that we'll be looking at today. We have Weight of Whispers by Ahdiambo Yvonne, who is from Kenya. We have Butterfly Dreams by Beatrice Lamwaka. She's Ugandan. We also have The Birds That Flew Away by Bushra Al-Fadil, who's Sudanese. We have Yenenga by Jamila Abdulai, who's Ghanaian. And we also have Salle by Melissa Tandiwe Myambo, who's from Zimbabwe. So you can find Salle in African Violet, which you can find you can purchase the copy online. You can also find Butterfly Dreams in To See the Mountains and Other Stories. It's a Kwani book. You can either buy it online or from Magunga bookstore. We also have Lusaka Punk, which has Yenenga. You can buy the book online as well, but some of the publishers are Kwani.
This is Kwani, yeah.
We have Femwright, which you can find in Kenya. Apologies. We also have Femwright in Uganda, and Jacana Media, which also happens to be in South Africa, amongst other publishers, which you can all find online. Just Google Caine Prize and you'll find all the information that you need online.
So Carol, start us off. Tell us your story, Les Sal Depa, right?
Yeah, my favorite story. The short story, one of, I enjoyed too. One of the short stories that I really enjoyed was Les Sal Depa, which is a story in a car about this guy and his sister. She's taking him back to the airport. He's traveling to America. It's set in Senegal, and they're really just talking about there's tension in the car. And the conversation is about how the sister is called Fatima and the brother is called Ibo. So she wants Ibo to take her son to the diaspora, to America, so that he can live with him and really just take care of him. The genesis of all of this is that when Ibo was 11, he was picked up by his uncle. Of course, I think they did that every generation or so. So an uncle who stayed in the States would come back and would go back with one of the children in the community. So when the uncle went back to America with Ibo, it was at the expense of his sister. His sister had to stop going to school so that all the money went to Ibo to be able to study and really just make a name for himself in America and hopefully, come back and invest money in his community, in his family, because they all said he will take care of us. So we have that conversation taking place in the car. What did you guys think about the story? I really, really personally enjoyed it.
It was I absolutely loved it. Like you. I think for me, it really explored something that a lot of diaspora writers kind of touch upon, but they don't normally delve into that whole, which is an expectation of a lot of people that go out into the diaspora. They are expected to take care of whoever they've left behind.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter at what cost, because we see, even in the beginning, the uncle that took Ibo to the States was a janitor. He had his own family to provide for, and he's working, cleaning, housing. So catering for this child was an obvious burden, but it was a burden that he was very... willing to take on, but also the community expected him to take on that responsibility. And so now when it comes time for Ibo to do the same thing, even though he's in a situation that is better off than his uncle was, he works, he actually, yes, exactly. He has a proper job, he's getting a good salary, he has a New York apartment. I think that's a big deal, living in New York during those times. But he's still really hesitant, and I think the reasons that he was hesitant, I beg your pardon, I think it has a lot to do, he was saying he's not able to raise a child. Even if he has the money and he's able to do it in terms of material things, he doesn't have the time. He can't be a parent the way this boy would need a parent. But his sister doesn't seem to understand that. She's like, he's very low maintenance. He can sleep on the couch.
Even
as in even standing in the closet. And then in my head, I'm just thinking, you're really not understanding where he's coming from.
But it's because they are in two different worlds. I think it's not that she's not understanding. For her, she doesn't see it as, like if you've lived in now like her in this village in Senegal your whole life, and someone is talking about America, like what are you meaning?
You don't have
to sleep.
What?
As in it doesn't mean anything.
As long as you get there.
If you can take him to America, then if he sleeps in a closet, if he sleeps on the floor, it doesn't matter. Because of course for her reality of what America is may not be what it actually is, because the way she talks about it is like, if my son goes, everything in his life will be perfect. That idea that which many of us in Africa have, that it's the land of possibilities and of milk and honey, and that if you go to America, it doesn't matter how you get there or what you have to go through to stay there. But at the end of it, so I think it also comes from like that thing of, for her, America is America.
I really enjoyed how the writer Melissa Tandiwe really balances the characters. I think it's also very interesting that she's Zimbabwean and she's writing about Senegal, and she really just adds French into the whole conversation, which really just gave me a whole other respect for her as a writer, because she did the work of really just understanding the space she's writing about. But also there's this balanced view of the characters. I mean, you really can't be, you kind of understand Fatima, because there's a point where Fatima says that, for me, I'm like the sand and you are the wind, and the wind blows the sand, because he's able to go while she's supposed to nest.
I can only be carried, by you. Exactly.
So she's also basically living vicariously through him, but then at the same time being unable to move. And yet you can see she's full of life. She has a business. When she divorced her husband, she started a cooking business. She started so much for herself, but at the same time, it just seems like it's not
There's
enough.
always a glass ceiling.
She's not able to
beyond a certain point.
It seems like even her taking care of her son, it doesn't seem like a possibility, and yet she actually can. And Ibo even suggests that, listen, I can pay for him to go to a school here, just not, him coming all the way. Yes. And I think it's really important for us to kind of just highlight why or where he was coming from, because he's left home at 11 years old. He didn't come home for like 3 years until he finished his A-levels. He passed, and then he comes home to find his mother literally
really
on her
sick.
deathbed. She was really sick. He never got to bury his mother. So I feel like when I was reading the book, it felt like he was abandoned when he was sent away, because when he got there, it didn't seem like the reality that he would have encountered. Like, I'm here, everything is possible.
Absolutely,
I should be happy,
this is the
but I'm not.
dream. Yes.
So I think that I understood it from his perspective. I understood why he said, I absolutely cannot take this guy, because I know what it meant to be ripped away from home, basically, which is something that happened to him.
Yeah.
But for me, also, just to wrap this book up, why I found it so interesting. First of all, I learned a new word, hello. But also, one of the core themes in the book is acculturation, which basically means that...
Your new word?
Yes, that's my new word, guys. Acculturation. Which basically means that you modify your culture in order to be able to adapt in, 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 and you find that even if you go visit an area, you have to adapt one thing or another about yourself in order to be able to fit in. So for me, I really connected with him at a whole other level.
I get that.
Esther, what story did you like the most?
Okay, I liked, I actually liked a couple also, but I think one of my favorite was Weight of Whispers by Yvonne Ahdiambo. She's from Kenya. And I think for me, okay, so basically let me start by saying what the story is about. So Yvonne writes about the genocide in Rwanda. So she writes about it from the perspective of a royal. They don't really specify, how he is, in the lineage and everything, but he's a royal, and he leaves Rwanda just as the genocide is starting with his fiancée, his sister, and his mother. So when he leaves, the beginning of the book, yes, he leaves to go to Kenya, but just before he leaves, his houseboy, I think they were Tutsi. I don't know, you guys should correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were Tutsi, and his houseboy had gone out, and for some reason, I don't know why in his head he felt like he was doing this for the family, but he goes out and Yvonne paints it like he has gone out and killed people, and then come back and said, yes, I've done it for you, sir. I've done this in your name, that kind of thing. So they run and they go to Kenya, escaping the genocide and, everything that's supposed to be with it. But then when they're coming into Kenya, they're not coming to stay. They're thinking that it's just transit and they're going to end up in the UK, where they're normally traveling and gallivanting as usual. So, they reach Kenya, they're staying at the Hilton because, this is just temporary. We're going to be able to get in touch with all our royal friends out there.
But keep in mind, the Hilton is also like a trash hotel in their view.
Yes, right. Yeah, like exactly the standards. I think Kenya in general was just really, it was a transit country for them. So there's no point at which they actually accord it any respect. Like they talk about it, she talks about it in a really derogatory manner, as if which is really interesting because she's a Kenyan writer, but I'll get into that later. So yes, these guys are in Kenya, and they're trying to reach people who are in the UK, who are supposed to be helping them get there, but things are not panning out. This guy is trying every day. At some point they realize that they don't have any more money for the hotel. They have to move out into like a bedsit kind of place, which is in a not so nice area. I think it was Westlands, in
Riverdale or something of
that. River Road, yes, River Road, yes. So so they move out, and he's trying really hard to find ways for them to be able to leave this country and live the life that they're supposed to be leading, as royals. Another thing that's standing in his way is the fact that they're on the list for what do they call it? Do you guys remember what they call the list of the genocide names? Something, yes, like it's some
like
French
the genociders.
Basically,
people perpetuating
yes,
the genocide.
exactly, and his name is on that list. So this is making everything incredibly hard. So the story is basically from that point when they get to Kenya and when he finally leaves. When he leaves, it's only him and his fiancée that leave. Unfortunately, his mother and his sister pass away. So I think for me, Weight of Whispers number 1 was a very long story, but it was so satisfying. I felt like at the end of the day, when I finished it, I was like, wow, she's such an interesting writer. I think for me, one of the things that I found amazing was that she was narrating a man's voice, and then she's a woman. And at no point did I feel like, no, you're not doing justice here. You're
also that she was Kenyan and she was talking about
yes. Also, yes, that she was Kenyan and she was talking about the Rwandese genocide, which I felt took a lot of research, like you were saying about Melissa. It was really deliberate. Like she had to go out and work and do this research,
she even references some music lyrics.
Yes, there's a lot of French terms.
They've got the Independence and
the newspaper.
But they've won the round table, they've won the independence, things like that. Exactly. And she says them deliberately in French.
Exactly.
Writes them rather in French, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I think for me another thing was the way in which she let us feel the emotion of the main character. I don't remember what his name was, you guys. Do you guys remember? Kusemeromana or something like this, yes. I beg your pardon if it's not the one. But the way she wrote almost in a monotone. Like when she was writing about a lot of his experiences, when he was being battered by the police, when he was rejected by his friend, when he went to his friend asking for help. This is someone that he was indebted to. His friend was indebted to him. But he didn't want to help him. Like, this guy was like, yo, really, this disrespect. But anyway, the way she's narrating, I had to create that emotion for myself. I was angry on his behalf, but he wasn't writing angry. Like, he was the one narrating, but he's not telling the story with venom or with, this whole thing. And yet I'm thinking, that guy gotta go.
Which
like,
is
he's such a bad
interesting
person.
because
Yeah.
that's how royals kind
Yes.
of are
Trained to be.
Supposed to act. Like, you can't get angry, you can't
have
get
to rein
into
it
bouts
in.
of rage. And
Absolutely.
you see that even the sister, Chichi, and the mother, kind of just
The mother
escape.
especially.
They escape
Any
themselves.
other sister actually.
So they're just airheaded. They are there. They're always asking, so have they responded any word from the people you contacted? Nothing. Okay. And they're just existing. They're just there.
I think
And
for me, what was interesting now that I think about that story was that, how like they talk about this list of these genociders and how you see these people who are on that list, but they really didn't do anything. I think it's just the idea that, someone makes the idea of that list. I think I found interesting.
Yes.
And the fact that this houseboy thought that he had done something for his master, which
was
like a favor.
I'm bringing you the gift.
Yeah. Which I think brings a whole different side to the whole genocide story. That they could have been people who did not want to be a part of all that stuff, but people did things in their name and because they thought this is what we were supposed. This is what
our masters would expect of us. So
let me go ahead,
and then I'll give a
which could have been their own personal actions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the lines or phrases that really stuck with me in the story is when one of he meets a Professor George Nsividwa, actually, who's married to a Kenyan woman, and he kept asking him, but how did you assimilate? How do you do it? How do you do it? And all Professor George kept saying was, place dictates form. Place dictates form. And I found that so interesting because even when he asked him, what do you mean, place dictates form? He threw a twig at a camouflaged crocodile and he said, place dictates form. So, you assimilate to the space that you're in. You become where you are. When in Rome, act like the Romans do. So that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And that's something that really they failed to do when they were in Kenya.
Exactly.
Well, I guess it's also because they were royals. I mean, like if you've grown up in a certain world, if you were a billionaire and then
you're reduced to this. Yeah, it's hard to find.
Even if they took you to like Hotel Africana, in your head would be like,
yeah. And I think you see now that whole royal thing. One of the things at the end that we find out that they need to do to be able to leave Kenya and go and settle in another safer country, is Chichi or Loon, who is the fiance to the main character. One of them is expected to go and spend the night with one of the UNHCR officials, because that is the way that they're going to be able to get their papers and leave the country. So of course, when this is put on the table, they bring it to Kusemerena. They bring it to him, and he's like, "What? I'm going to pretend that I don't even understand what you're talking about. I'm out." Like, of course not, because this is his fiance and his sister. He's surrounded by 3 of the most important women in his life, and 2 of them are being asked to do this really disgusting thing. But then at the end, we see that Loon does it. She actually goes and sleeps with one of the men. And Kusemerena, I'm so sorry, that name is a trick. Yeah, he absolutely loses it. He gets really, really angry and starts hitting.
And for the first time, that's where we see his anger,
the
actual anger and how he's been feeling outside of that monotone voice that you were talking about.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's the first time that we actually experience his proper emotion. So
my favorite story of the 5 stories that we read for this discussion was #Yenenga, and if I say any of these names badly, please forgive me, by Jamila Abdulai. When I read this story, I was hooked from the start because the story is about, first of all, the fact that it's a hashtag, it's very relevant to what's going on right now on this whole Twitter hashtag fad that we're all doing. So it's about this woman who is a celebrity and she's known all over Ghana and everybody knows who she is. And she's sort of like, this celebrity who has built a library in her village, who has done things, everybody knows her, everyone thinks she's cool. And then she kills a man. And she kills a minister who was her lover, and she has to go to jail, and she's arrested, and her case is taken to court. And there's this whole there are hashtags on Twitter about it, and there's hashtag death to her. The people who think what she did was wrong and who want her to die, and there are these people who loved her, like people who she did things for or said things to, and they think she's amazing. I think the whole idea, one, is because pop culture and whatever that has infiltrated Africa is the whole thing of celebrities and how we love them and hate them, and how easily one thing you do can just ruin you. But more importantly, I think Yenenga herself was such an interesting character. When she was young, she witnesses, first of all, her parents, first of all, her parents sent her to live with her auntie, I think in like a city. And so she's going to the market and she witnesses rape. She witnesses this man who she describes as a man with a very black ass, raping, defiling this 4-year-old girl. And she's so traumatized, and she goes to the market and she's screaming and looking for help, but there's not really anyone to help. And she goes back, and this good Samaritan has come and is trying to help this girl. They put her in a car, and she later finds out this girl dies, and how that kind of traumatizes her. First of all, she goes back home and she tells no one about it. She keeps quiet, and we see that as she grows older, she's a bit screwed. She becomes this detached but not detached person, because she first of all she loses her virginity to a man who becomes her best friend, and they have this really weird relationship where he's called David, and they have this really weird relationship where he's her person. Yes, he was white. He was a diplomat, and he was white. Because there's a part when they're talking about, I think, their relationship, and he says, I can't, nobody can, because he finds out that, because when she loses her virginity, she's underage, 17. And then he finds out that she's 17 years old, and he's so shocked. He's disturbed, but then he's so disturbed, and then they just develop this relationship that even when she's in jail, he's the one sending her a lawyer and everything that she needs. But when she goes to jail, she's so ready to die. She's so ready for the death sentence to be hit. She knows she's guilty, and she's just...
And I think, so for me now, it brings my question about, I really loved the story. It was very well written. I was hooked, as in I read it until I finished. But I think for me, my question comes in with, do you see how ready she was to die for her cause? I feel like when we found out why she had killed this man, why she had killed the minister, in my head I was just like, really? This is what, like, I don't know why it didn't feel...
So let's talk about why she killed him.
Yes, okay. So it turns out that she killed the minister because he was in link, and he was liaising with Chinese that was supposed to come and buy a certain amount of land in, I think it was close to the center, I don't know. So they were supposed to come and buy a certain amount of land and then come and build and basically do what Chinese do when they come to Uganda and when they come to African territory.
He was going to displace people,
establish themselves. Yes,
they would displace people and take over large pieces of land to do business as not necessarily beneficial to the common man.
I think it's interesting that the story starts off by her recounting that the rape of the 4-year-old, because if at the very end you realize that it symbolizes what the Chinese were coming to do to the African land, and that justifies why she killed the minister.
Or why something snapped in her head. Because she says when she found out, there's a line that says, when Yenenga says that when I found out what
she first says they think that I killed him because he was cheating on
and
me.
she's like, what? Like, not
why would I? For such
a
petty reason. And then she says, when I found out what his deal was with the Chinese people, I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
Which is like, for her, this was, and she says, like, for me, I saw it in this sense of like, this is the man I finally, because this chick never fell in love with anyone. Like, after this man she slept with, she just sleeps with men and moves on and concentrates on her career. This was the first man that she had feelings for.
She was also a journalist, like a popular journalist.
Yes.
And she and even David is shocked that this is the man who captures her heart and everything. And I think for her it was like, if I didn't save this child, me, that's the way I understood it, that when she was younger, there was nothing she could have done for this child who was raped, and that child never got justice, and justice was never going to be got for him. And this, finally, she could give justice to this whole thing. And of course, we know in Africa, like, if she had reported, what would have happened? I mean, he was a minister.
Yeah.
So that, in her own way, was justice.
I find it so interesting also that She never explained herself. She never sat
She
down
didn't-
to tell
yes,
anyone
yeah.
that actually you guys think, I killed him.
No,
Because
she let them assume what
she
they
was
wanted to. Yeah.
mute in prison. Everyone who would ask her, she would
Yeah.
just look at them, and it's people who would just pass whispers around saying,
Yes.
she's a murderer, she's a murderer, she's a murderer.
Yeah. And then I think she had also accepted her fate in the sense
Yeah.
that she said every time she would even try to think of life after prison or think of not, she'd be like, by the way, come back. You are dying and that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
even when she
had
saw the
resigned
hashtag
herself.
free
Exactly.
Nenga, she just laughed.
Yeah.
And then, made
And
fun
then-
of Twitter in itself.
Yes. And then just lastly, the Yenanga name. Because her name was really connected to the author was really intentional about making her name very connected to Mother Earth. I don't know whether you have the story. There's somewhere in the end where she describes, she had about 4 names, and one of them was directly related to Mother Earth. I think it
Which
really
is
justified,
Yenanga.
Yes, I think it was Yenanga.
Yeah, it
So
says
it really justifies that she went to those extremes to
Layla,
protect
she
the
was
land.
called
that she
Layla
loved.
Yenenga Intenga, chosen by her community and soul alike. Her first because she was born in the middle of the night. Her second, after her ancestor, Princess Nyenyenga, pearl of the kingdom, legendary horsewoman, skilled warrior, hunter, mother and protector of the land.
Exactly. It was really poetic, I think, that she rose up and fought for her land.
So there are 2 other stories that we haven't discussed.
Yeah, maybe we could start with Butterfly Dreams, which is by Beatrice Lamwaka, the Ugandan story. It is in this book, as it said earlier, To See the Mountain and Other Stories, and it's told from the perspective of a sibling of a child who was abandoned by the LRA, abducted. It's told from the perspective of a sibling from a child who was abducted by the LRA rebels in northern Uganda, and it reads like a letter, because it starts out by saying, when you came back home, before you came back home, we listened to radio every day, just to hear, if you had been found, just to hear if there was a signal to say that you are dead or alive. We asked all the children who came back before you if they ever saw you, but no one ever. People had said you were dead, so we buried your spirit. But then when we heard your name and we heard our mother's name, then we were at peace. But now the abducted child comes back to a place that is not home. First of all, they're in a concentration camp, and life has changed. They
for
don't,
both of them, for her and for them,
and they don't want to talk about her trauma because they feel like they've had from everyone.
Already had.
But I think also she doesn't want to talk about it because she's mute. Like when she comes back home, she doesn't speak until like the end.
Yeah, but I think
she
it
goes
was
back
also
to
that
school.
thing when she keeps saying that we did not need you to tell us about her trauma. We had heard it from, and then she listens.
This is the narrator.
Yes.
When the narrator says that, I think it was also that thing of, even if she was mute, they didn't coerce her to try to tell them what had happened because they had had the tears and they didn't need that. And for me, I think it goes back to that thing of sometimes when people go through traumatic situations and there's no room for them to be able to talk about them, then I think that increased her muteness because she had seen this trauma and there was nothing. They didn't want to talk about it. They wanted everything to be normal. They wanted her to come back and be that adventurous child,
to be a doctor,
and to be that little child that was abducted. They wanted things to continue from where they stopped, and she couldn't. So she was mute. I feel like, you had a really strong reaction to the story. So.
Yes, you guys, I cried. I think for me, the parts where I cried were the parts where Beatrice was talking about her education. The first part where she says
education, the
about
narrator
no, not the narrator. Her sister was come back. Her name was, I can't remember her name, guys. But so she's talking about her education, and this girl who was abducted wanted to be a doctor, and she's just talking about how her mom was a nurse. Yeah, Lamuni, yes. So Lamuni wanted to be a doctor, and her mom was a nurse, and she's come back, and it's like that dream was really just ripped away from her because she's gone, and instead of even giving life to people, she's being forced to take it, and she's like, for me, it was just a lot. And then I think at the end, the reason that I was also so teary is because it looks like there's hope. Like there's actually a chance for her. Number one, she's being put into an environment where people understand what she has gone through. I think that's also one of the things that stopped her from talking at home. Not just that people didn't want to hear, but then sometimes speaking in a space where people are not going to understand what you went through, it's a bit redundant. It feels like even if I say things, it won't change anything. You guys were not there. You would not understand.
I think it's also that thing of, I think it's a bit also shame. because
that's the thing, yeah,
you know,
because she
they'll
had to
look
do,
at
she
her
had to
like,
kill, she had to, yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah.
even if you're sympathizing, it's a bit,
It's still,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, oh
dramatic.
God, friend, I
Yeah.
understand, but it's still a lot. Exactly. So yeah, for me, those were like really
Yeah.
highlights of the book. Yeah,
Yeah.
like those two parts, they really spoke to me.
Then we'll just move on to the last story, which was The Birds That Flew Away. It is the 2017 winner of the Caine Prize.
Small.
We debated about this story a lot.
No.
By Bushra Al-Fadil
But,
from
yeah.
Sudan. Although now he's based in Saudi Arabia, but he spent some time in Sudan, and then he was actually, I think he was sent out of the country for being a political activist.
Damn.
And then now he's in Saudi Arabia, but he writes up the setting is in Sudan. And anyway, for me, when I was really
It's a lot.
investigating and interrogating why, because
Maybe let's start from how you felt, when you read it.
Or what the story is about. I think start from
it's
there.
very hard to also just
You can't even
explain
say what it's about.
It's
Yeah,
so
like
hard to explain.
legitimately.
I
You
thought
can find
somebody
the
here had
story
some
online.
insight.
No, seriously. You can find the story online, but to put it very loosely, it's about this guy who just
Who meets a
like
girl
he
whose
walks
birds
around
flew
so
away.
Yeah.
so he seems as though he's airheaded, but he's not. Then he sees this chick, and he's like, man, this chick looks like she has birds flying all over her. Like
She actually says she looks like she has her birds have flown
Flown
away,
away,
which
yeah.
is so weird to understand, because it's like, if you can't even see the birds, how do you know they flew away? Like, were they there in the first place? Like,
Maybe
you guys,
the birds,
it's
yeah,
a lot.
No, I thought the
from-
birds were symbolic for something. I
yes,
didn't think
but
he
also
literally
start
meant
from the
birds.
fact that the story has been translated.
Yeah.
So,
I
I mean,
that's a beginning point.
yeah,
Absolutely.
Because it was written in Arabic, I think.
Mm.
Then I mean, maybe some things can get lost in translation.
Yeah.
But then it's also that thing of when a story is written in a mother tongue, it's best in its mother tongue.
Yes.
As opposed to when it's translated. But then again, for me, when I read that story, when I was going through the motions, at first I was really angry because I didn't understand why this person would win the story. But then when I did the research, I realized that this story won because it is innovative. And I thought that it actually was innovative, because a lot of times, I mean, we read stories every day and they make us feel different things. And then you encounter that story that really just pushes you off your axis. And you're like, what is going on? What do you want from me?
Yeah.
So it felt like I had to come into the story without any preconceived notions. I'm not taking anything from the title. I'm just entering the story and I'm going for whatever
it
ride
takes
is
me,
taking me.
I read
wherever
the
it
story
takes me.
twice, actually.
And simply that's it. And for me, it made, besides his poetic use of language, because
it's very,
really
very
good.
poetic.
He really describes,
And you
the
actually see the
marketplace.
things that he's
So can
describing.
I ask, would you have labored through trying to understand this story if he had not won?
Yes, I would have, because at the end of the day, when I read a story and it doesn't make sense, I ask myself, but why doesn't it make sense? Why aren't I getting the point? Like, is it about this? I need to have options in my head. But for me, when I got to the end, I was like, Then I had to go back.
Reading it, I think honestly at the end, because remember how even when you're looking, like there's, like you've said, I think for me, it's very poetic. So when you're reading it, you're thinking, oh my God, he writes beautifully. But I did not get what he was trying to tell me. And then now for me, I think, unlike you, I was just like, for me, it just felt like an abstract painting. Like, you guys, that thing is there on the wall and it's beautiful and people who get it will get it. But maybe it's just not mine to get. Do you get it? Like, I was just like, I don't see what it is. Like, where you were taking me, I've not arrived.
Okay, so then just to wind up, let's ask the question. Who is this story winning for?
Yes.
Well, me personally, whenever I read anthologies, most of the times the winning story is not the story that hits me. But for this particular story, I struggle to understand why it won. But my explanation can be that maybe I believe some of this, like the Caine Prize, because it was started by a white woman and it was started to get African stories out there. I don't necessarily think that this story was started, these stories as they win and whoever I don't think they were meant for the African reader. I think they are stories.
But the panel is made up of even African judges.
No, there are some African ones, but
judges.
the council has a lot of white people. And the fact that it was established outside of Africa, for me, I think at the end of the day, I cannot expect a white person to be making something for me to
So
consume.
then,
me
what
as
was
an
the
African.
point of the Caine Prize?
I think to
take
take
to the
African
world.
stories
Yeah.
to the
To
So
places
how
that
do
they
you
probably
feel
wouldn't have
that
reached.
this story is representing you as an African?
I really
Until
don't,
this is how
because
they
me, I
write.
don't get it. I don't get the story.
Does it make you feel angry?
No, it's not about that. I feel like that if
No,
this story
God.
had been, let's say, in an African writing prize started by Africans, if we started the So Many Stories writing prize, I don't necessarily think this story would have been the one where we're like, I think that where we are
That's
like,
also what I
you
think.
get. I don't think if this was a story that you took in a typical, let me not talk about the whole of Africa because I don't know the whole of Africa, to a typical Ugandan book club, I don't think they would be like,
oh, it's so great.
This is
Yeah.
such
Oh,
a
it
bomb
blew me
book.
away.
it
was
wouldn't
so-
be like, I don't think so. I
Yeah.
don't think we would get that reaction. But I do think that there are stories that could be written, and as a Ugandan book club, we are blown away. But those stories would never win the Caine Prize.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think
absolutely.
anyway, as we wind up, it's important for us to note that in order to submit for the Caine Prize, your story has to be submitted by a publisher.
Yes.
So you can reach out to literally any publisher in whatever country that you're based in, submit a story, and they are the ones who select which stories are submitted for the Caine Prize. And then also that your story has to have been published at least once within a period of 5 years, you know, so that it can be even get to being considered for a shortlist or to win a prize at the end of it all.
Yep.
So thank you for watching. Please
Thank
tell us
you,
what you'd like us
guys.
to read next time.
And tell us what you thought of the stories. If you've read any of them, please leave comments below.
Yeah.
Especially the birds that flew away.
You
Yeah.
can find
And
them
tell us
online.
if we are wrong. Okay, if I'm wrong about my opinion.
You
of some
guys
of these
check
things.
it out. Let us know on Twitter, Facebook, and
Yep.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Even
All the
YouTube.
platforms.
You can drop your comments in the comment section below.
Yeah. See you next episode.
Bye.